and that's Jacoby Walter. So Jacoby Walter is headed to Baylor, 6'5" guard. I think he's going to be a really interesting follow through his journey. A lot of similarities to Baylor's Keontae George last year. Just one of these scoring wings that can get it done at all three levels. I'm really intrigued by him, Albert. What are your initial just thoughts on Jacoby Walter coming into the year?
I think for me, it's if you do the initial dive, like a shallow dive, not a deep dive. I think it's easy to be like, okay, it's not hard to see why people are like Kevin O'Connor came out pretty early this summer and was like, I think Jacoby Walter is going to be like one of these top guys. And then I know Rucker and Metcalf on their pod have talked about why they're so high on Jacoby as well. And I think it makes sense, and he's currently number 5 on my board. And there's a lot of different reasons, obviously, that we're about to get into. But just like from that initial shallow dive of his game, the measurables, all those things, you could see, okay, like he just looks like a prototype NBA wing. Just from the outside. And as we get deeper into his game, there's going to be a lot to talk about because there is like a multi-faceted aspect to his game, and a reason why that I think by that. But then also, Corey, I do want to say there is like a small part of me that is a little concerned too. Not concerned is actually not the right word. I just have I want to kind of pump the brakes a little bit on myself, just because who knows, right? Like we haven't seen him play any college basketball yet. We don't know what his rookie season might actually look like. But overall, a really exciting prospect. And I'm excited to get into it.
Well, I think that perspective is going to be good because we don't just want to be all, singing the praise of these prospects who, every prospect has holes in their game, especially at this point in their development. And especially, we're going to be breaking down film that took place a year ago, right? So like, based on this film, we haven't seen them in a while. And when the college season starts, they're going to be better players just because they had another, pivotal offseason under their belt. So this is a preseason dive, right? And I think that there are a lot of areas in which I completely understand that with Jacoby. Now, we got an opportunity to see him in person at the Nike Hoop Summit. I didn't think that he was one of the standouts.
Agreed.
But in a lot of ways, it was almost like it felt like a good thing that he was a guy who was able to blend in, because he also wasn't somebody that we noticed that we were like, oh, he's having a rough week. And I think that says a lot about who he could be as a prospect, who he kind of is as a prospect. Because I think ultimately, as we break down his film here, the first thing that you can talk about with him, right, is that he is going to be a guy that right away is going to be able to play off the ball.
Yeah.
He's going to be a guy who can knock down spot up shots. That's a pretty shot, high arc, right? And I think we saw a lot of that during his time at Link, where he was playing off of Elliot Cadeau. Because why would you want to take the ball out of Elliot Cadeau's hands, right? That dude is just an absolute monster playmaker. So he did a lot of the off the ball stuff that I think is pivotal for one, as a freshman coming to a team like Baylor that's going to have a lot of backcourt help, right? And then two, trying to talk about him as an NBA prospect, like chances are he's not going to come in and be the number one option on a team. He's going to be a guy that has to learn how to fit in. And the fact that he has this ability to be a guy who can knock down spot up shots and, score off the ball, I think that's going to be really big for him as a prospect.
100% agree, Corey. I kind of want to emphasize the first point that you made about our impressions of him at the Nike Hoop Summit. I think blending in can be taken two different ways, right? I think the way that you portrayed it is he's fitting in, he's not doing too much, he's not playing outside of himself, is one way to look at blending in. Another way, like a pessimistic view of blending in, might be like, oh, like maybe he's just kind of ghosting, maybe he's not really, showing off or showing himself and what he can actually do, or he's kind of disappearing from the moment. I think it kind of we're talking about semantics here, right? But I think overall, I definitely agree with you with Jacoby in that he's more of a blender rather than like, a go-to guy. But also, like, we've talked a little bit about Cameron Carr as well and Elliot Cadeau. We did the whole breakdown. Like playing with a guy like Elliot Cadeau kind of gives you the freedom to just be, a supporting role type of guy, a guy who can play off of a primary ball handler like Cadeau. So I think it really is going to be interesting to see. Once again, I'm kind of, reserving making final judgments on anything, but it's going to be interesting to see how he blends in at Baylor, how he gets to show off his game at Baylor, what he looks like in that system with that roster and not the one that he played with at Link is going to be really interesting to watch as well.
Absolutely. But, I think bringing up Cameron Carr is a nice little segue into separating Jacoby, talking about, okay, this is a dude who can play off the ball. There are levels to that, right? Because Cameron Carr was a guy who like exclusively was off the ball and he really did so little off the bounce shot creation. Jacoby has that to his game. Right. And, we'll break down some of the AAU film where he showed a lot more of it, but he still showed the high level flashes playing next to Elliot Cadeau with Link, scoring with the ball in his hands. He's just content with, not forcing the issue, which, is a positive. I guess you can look at it as well, like you mentioned, where maybe that lack of aggressiveness could be something you could be slightly concerned with. But I look at this as a positive. I mean, this is a high level NBA shot, right? Like off the bounce, creating offense and knocking down, a tough shot with, some pretty, nifty, like it was with the ease, right? It's like a beautiful, beautiful shot off the bounce. And I think that's the difference between him and Cameron Carr, who were both playing off. Like Cameron Carr just couldn't do, he couldn't execute this kind of move, coming off right in a defender in his face, going to, the drifting to the right a little bit. Like this is a really beautiful high level shot from Jacoby.
Yeah, no, Corey, I definitely agree. I think the point that I was trying to make was, not necessarily that I thought he was hiding or anything, but who knows, right? Like what it'll look like at Baylor. But I do want to say, Corey, this play that you're showing here is not a one-time thing. Like some people might be like, okay, easy to point out a highlight. He did this a lot actually at Link. And there were times where even from the mid-range, he'd, dribble right, pump fake first, dribble right, couple, do a little spin, shoot over the right shoulder. He was doing all kinds of stuff that, as you mentioned earlier, would be, kind of viewed as an NBA level type of move is what he has. I think he's got real handle to him. I don't think personally at this, from what we saw on the tape, I didn't think he was like an elite ball handler or anything like that, but there is something to him. There is a shiftiness to him. He has really long arms, which I think plays to his benefit as a ball handler as well. But yeah, overall, like as you mentioned, he's not Cameron Carr. He's not just going to be running off of screens, running off of, different actions just to get, outside shots. He absolutely can, but that won't be the only aspect of his offensive game. So I'm right there with you, man. There's a nice layered aspect to his offense that is going to be interesting to see. And also, once again, just hammering that Baylor point again, want to see what type of license and freedom he gets to, try that type of stuff in Baylor as well.
Yeah, I'm looking for more of that, more of what we're showing on the screen now. Because, I actually thought he had a pretty creative handle. He didn't always show that at Link, but there were definitely moments where he did. But with Team Trae Young, like he's really good, especially in the pick and roll, at like setting guys up. That was something that we really enjoyed with Brandon Miller last year, was his pick and roll setups. But like, look how low to the ground he is, a little in and out, and then the pull up quick release with a hand in his face. This is a really, really pretty high level shot that he's knocking down off the bounce here from range. Now he's not perfect as a shot creator.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to see some shot consistency. I think the creativity is there a lot. But like on this possession here, he shows a lot of nifty footwork and everything, but ultimately the end result is that it felt slightly rushed when it came to executing, the actual make on the shot. Like it was one of those like $1 million move, 10-cent finish type of things. Cause he was just a little too off balance. Like he needs to hone this aspect of it. Like it's a clean look, right? But he's so off balance that he ends up falling. There's just not that kind of like I'm
Refinement.
able to stay balanced after I break you down like this. I think that's something that he's going to be able to work on, get better at, and ultimately turn into a strength at the next level. Because I do think the creativity in this possession is pretty impressive. It's just it's just something that he needs to keep repping out.
Yeah, Corey. I think rushed is a good word. I also thought sometimes it was a little clunky.
Mm.
Not trying to be like overly critical, but sometimes a little loose, a little clunky. I think lacking some of that refinement is kind of what we're saying. But hey, man, like honestly, Corey, I was watching tape this week and I had like a moment. It's not even an epiphany because what the hell are we talking about? But I was like, I just kind of like had to take a break because I look at the screen so much that I had to take a break and look up at my ceiling. And I was like, damn, I am being so damn harsh about these kids. Like that's what they were, right? The film that we're
Yeah,
watching, they
totally.
actually genuinely were kids. And
Yeah.
like I really needed a moment to be like, yeah, he's gonna like not just him, but all these kids are gonna get better unless they don't love the game and they don't love themselves. Like I feel like they're all going to get better at basketball. And watching Jacoby, yeah, there's definitely a little clunkiness, as you mentioned, $1 million move, 10-cent finish. But I think that refinement time is going to come. And Corey, you mentioned it. This offseason, they played in a bunch of all-star games, went to the Hoop Summit, was playing in those scrimmages, playing against, the world, playing against each other, playing against Portland Generals. Who knows what they're doing in the offseason as well, what type of work they're getting out wherever they are. And so I'm with you, man. I think the fact that we saw the signs of this and the fact that, they've gone through the offseason, that they've gone through Jacoby specifically, and is now going to be playing at Baylor. I'm excited as much as you are to see how much more of this that he can do because I think he has the size. I think he has the measurables. I think he has a creativity. If he brings all of that together a little bit tighter, it's really interesting. Exciting to think about.
100%. You mentioned the mid-range game a little earlier,
Yeah.
and I think this is a really fun possession where he shows it off a little bit, and it's a tough shot off balance. But again, a little bit of that self-creation. I love how low to the ground he gets as he's about to make a move. I think his first step, and you'll see it a little bit when he starts getting to the rim, I think he's got really impressive first step burst, which is interesting because I don't think he's like a great vertical athlete.
Yep.
But I think that he's able to use that first step burst as a means to create, get to the spots in which he's trying to get and just get that little advantage, every little advantage that he can. And he does a really good job of that on this possession in isolation in creating that.
Yeah, no, Corey, the mid range is important. It's something we talk about all the time. And Corey, actually, I wanted to ask you because you obviously have a closer eye to stuff like this, but I thought sometimes off the dribble he kind of struggled on the gather. Like after doing a lot of different moves, I thought sometimes it could be a little clunky. Him getting the ball up. That one looks really really nice. But overall, I thought sometimes it was like that. But I'm with you. Like the mid range stuff is something that I wrote down in my notes. Like I thought I liked it a lot, and I thought it's something that it's going to be a huge part of his game, in my opinion, for him to eventually hit his 1% outcome, for him to be the potential really great offensive wing. I think that mid-range stuff is going to be really important for him, that he continues to work on that, continues to go to that, because it's going to open up so many different aspects of his game. And we haven't talked about the finishing yet, which we'll get to, but all of that is why people like KOC, like us, like different people I know ceilings are excited about his future.
Yeah, that 3-level scoring ability.
Right.
Like it's not just the dunks and threes. He's got that
that
mid-range ability. And this is a miss here
Mm-hmm.
But I really like the creativity and the ability to create space. I think when he gets stronger too, because he has a good frame already, right? Like he's already strong and he has a good frame. But when he uses that shoulder, and I'll pause it, right when he's making the move, like right here, he's gonna be able to put that right shoulder into the defender's chest just to create a little bit extra space, to where he doesn't kind of have to second guess the shot, because the defender is kind of coming at him, even though he doesn't get a hand up on the contest. You could tell that he's kind of like worried about his landing. Because he doesn't want to step on the foot. And I think like just getting that extra bit of space and separation is going to be something that's really important for Jacoby Walter. But again, I like the creativity. I like the ability to comfortably shoot it off the bounds. I think this is going to be a weapon for him and open up, the different aspects of his game. Because we know if you're just a dunks and threes guy, you become predictable, right? Like, if once you're getting downhill, that means that I know that you're getting downhill and I'm going to wait for you at the rim. So you need counters. And he has that little mid-range game. I also thought that, he was pretty nifty in getting to like his floater game a lot of times. And he had different variations of it. And because he's kind of like an old school jump shooter, he'll even like jump shoot float it like a lot of times. But right here, you'll see another thing he likes to do. We saw it before. He loves to reject ball screens and play into space. But yeah, just a nice little cross in playing into the space on the left wing and knocks down the smooth floater.
Corey, just going really quickly back to your point about like that shoulder move. I mean, we just saw it last night with Devin Booker. Something he does all the time, creating that extra little, little window for him to get his shot off with that shoulder. Obviously, Jason Tatum, another guy, is so good at that. But Corey, I think something that I wrote in my notes that I love, and I love that you're highlighting right now, is I thought he showed immense touch. Whether it was like with his floaters, or you said it perfectly, kind of like him shooting it in. I wrote like push shot, but it's essentially the same thing that we're saying. Like, he has good touch around the rim, and I think kind of speaks to him really being like one of these guys that can really shoot the ball, that has great touch from kind of anywhere on the floor. And so I'm with you, man. I think also, it's important that he does stuff like this, just because I don't think he's an elite athlete vertically. You mentioned that as well, something that I wrote. Also, I think like he is like a pretty strong-ish guy, but I thought he kind of struggled and avoided contact at times when he's going to the rim, which is something that I like to see him improve upon. But as he gets stronger and he embraces more of that contact, and he has this type of touch, we're talking about a scary, interior scorer.
Yeah, undoubtedly. And again, I think the one thing he shows here on this possession, again, where he's rejecting the screen, is that burst coming off the cross. Like that's a nice blow by, does a good job avoiding the defender and doing that little push float shot that, we were talking about. Not like your traditional Tony Parker teardrop floater, but more of more of that jump shot floater. So yeah, I love that he has those aspects of an in-between game to him. And I think Devin Booker is probably like the dream, right? Like, ultimately, when you see a shooting guard like this, like, that is your ideal scenario for somebody to end up like that. Now, there's a lot of different outcomes. You can, be Bradley Beal, who's still a high level scorer, but not quite at that tier of complete player, right? And then there are lower tier outcomes as well, right? Like even a guy like Zach LaVine, who is a really efficient, great scorer, but you're not going to put in that same tier. Even, and obviously athletically, Zach LaVine was a different athlete, but he's all a super skilled guy as well. So developing some of the other parts of his game, and I'm going to be interested to talk about him. I think that that's going to be important. Going to his finishing again, I think right away, early on. He's going to be a guy who uses that shot gravity to attack those closeouts and kind of get to the rim. And again, having the threat of a shot where people have to close out to you, it's just huge. And he has that. So I think that because he has that first step, he's going to be able to get to the rim just attacking closeouts and get a couple of, get some easy buckets just that way.
Yeah, Corey. I mean, we talk about a lot of prospects that their swing skill is shooting, and it seems like with Jacoby, he kind of has that in his bag. He's going to be coming into his freshman season kind of known as a good outside shooter, so that should play to his advantage. But yeah, Corey, I'm with you, man. There are a lot of different outcomes that can come from a guy like this, but I don't know, like it just makes me think, like, with the type of touch that, and there's a cerebral aspect to his game that I actually really enjoyed. He seemed like a guy who was really processing the game pretty well, and I thought was making some smart decisions. Although, once again, like, there also were moments where I thought his game did look a little clunky, a little messy, but also, he was like 16, 17, 18 years old. So let me relax with that. And,
he's demoing some songs right now.
Exactly. SoundCloud is getting all the bad stuff right now. It's okay. But no, I'm with you, Corey. Like, I'm excited to see this develop. But once again, just like with the inside stuff, like, just a little bit more strength, I think will benefit him a little bit. But that's a nice little lob for him to finish. Another great lob from Elliot Cadeau, kind of his thing. Always good
definitely his thing. This is a nice finish below the rim, right? Like, even the alley-oop that we played, the last clip, like, he wasn't
Flying.
throwing it down like we're going to see from Omaha in a little bit, right? Like, it was a nice dunk, but it wasn't anything special. But if he can have the touch finishes like this, like that's probably more important. Like he's never going to be the super athlete. He'll get better athletically just from strength and conditioning, right? But these touch finishes where, he's off balance going up and under, I think that's really important. But one of the reasons I think his percentages were so high, like he's really good in transition, even though he's not a super athlete. He hustles. He's the first guy down the floor here. And, he's got a point guard and people on his team that are going to reward him for doing it. So of course you want to run, right? So I'm bullish on the finishing because I've seen like a lot of craft to it, right? Like, yeah, he's demoing some stuff and sometimes it looks a little clunky, but then other times like he's busting out some really like high level, finishing packages, like breaking this guy down off the dribble here. And look at that left hand.
Yeah.
Soft left hand. And that's huge. Not a lot of prospects can finish with their left hand like that. And that looked natural. It didn't look like it went in and it was awkward. It was very, very natural. It's clearly something that he's going to, continue to emphasize, I think. So, I really like his finishing package, even if it's not like super highlight reel worthy a lot of the times. I think he's very effective and efficient here.
That's a nice
takes
rip.
The contact, catch and rip, right? Just like one of the first clips in the finishing section. But that first step, and he's got the guy on his hip, uses it to cleanly get to the rim. I love that about him.
Corey, it's amazing how impressed we get when a guy finishes with their offhand. We're not that hard to please. We like a good offhand finish.
Yeah, we certainly do.
But 100%, man. Like that's a really nice rip, man. Really quick, as you mentioned, gets the guy just, the defender's just fighting for his life to get back, and a nice clean finish. So I'm with you, man. There's a lot to like. There's a lot to like. A good foundation, and I think he's very worthy of being in that top 5 conference. I have him at 5.
Yeah, that's the range I have him, 5 or 6 in that range right now. I could be talked into having him at number 3 ultimately. Yeah, exactly. Like I really, really like him, and because I think there are hidden layers to his game. And right now let's talk about his playmaking a little bit, because he's not doing like super high level like weak side hit stuff. Like he misses the guy in the weak corner there, but he makes a great read and a really crafty operator of the pick and roll here, hitting the strong corner. So let's see him walk the ball up the court. High ball screen.
Damn, Cooper
gets the
Flash.
switch, right? Yep. Rocked. Goes behind the back.
Yeah.
Gets into the middle of the court.
Boom.
Liam McNeely's helping off the strong corner.
What are you doing?
And it's that's an easy look. Like that's the right play. Like, yes, it would have been sick if he made the weak side hit, but it wasn't the right play. So I mean, I just love the creativity, how he's able to react there, and bang. Right to the shooter.
I'm with you, Corey. I wrote in my notes, I think he's a good passer. I didn't think he was elite. Didn't think he was amazing. Not Elliot Cadeau for sure, but he can hit the one more, a guy that'll keep the ball moving. There was one play against Montverde. He caught an offensive rebound and threw this unbelievable behind the back pass to their big for a dunk. And I was like, that's sick. Like is he going to do that all the time? Probably not. But the fact that, he even attempted something like that and kind of has that in his bag once in a while, it's good. It's all we're looking for, right? Like we can't be expecting elite tools and abilities from all these kids. Like they're all growing, they're all getting better. So signs of growth, signs of these types of abilities is like, that's the type of stuff that gets us excited.
Yeah. And this is where I think the Keontae comparisons are going to come, because I think he's going to get the opportunity to run these ball screen actions. And remember, like when Keontae came out of the gate last year, he had like all of these nifty passes, and people were like, where the hell did this come from? Because one of the things we talked about in our preseason pod, we were like, Keontae will move the ball, he'll do the one more, but there's not a lot of creativity. And now it's like, oh, can this dude actually be like a lead ball handler, like point guard on the team, and not like one of these Bradley Beal guys? Can he actually be like something more than that, and run your offense? So I think there are a lot of flashes that indicate that like Jacoby might be able to do that. And he's got better size than Keontae, right? Gets downhill, draws the defense, throws the lob, soft lob, on target, great timing, great pacing there. Really nifty. Again, he's I want to go one more pick and roll pass here. I thought this is one of my favorite passes of his that I saw. He's going to handle getting blitzed here, right? Defense is going to fire this ball screen, and the little underhand. He's patient. He's poised. He doesn't get sped up there, and just utilizing that underhand whip pass to the roller, sick. Absolutely sick.
I mean, it's good stuff. It's good stuff, man. Once again, and who knows what that'll look like in college? How many? Like, no, actually, I hope he gets a lot of that. I hope, like as you mentioned with Keontae, that he gets to try a lot of that stuff. It's exciting. It's exciting, dude. And once again, like, I don't think either one of us are trying to project him as like he's going to be a number one option, to start, or who knows, right? Like maybe he's never a number one option. Maybe he's a number two type of guy. But if you have a number two type of guy that can make that type of pass, who does not want that on their team? Everybody wants that, with his, wing size and his ability to shoot and handle and stuff. Like everyone is looking for that type of player, which is why he's probably going to go really high.
Yeah. And like, having that in your bag is important, because I think that that's one of the reasons that like a guy like Jaden Hardy fell to the second round, right? Like people didn't think that he had the playmaking stuff to his bag. And, we've yet to really see that on an NBA level. I think he started showing a little bit more of that towards the end of that G League season, but not consistently, right? So if Jacoby can come out the gates with that, I think that's going to do a lot for his draft stock. And you're going to see why so many people are so high on him. Now, let's move to the other side of the ball and break down his defense really quickly. I thought that he had some really impressive defensive isolation possessions. Like I thought this was a great possession here. I think he's competitive. He gets low in his stance. He has that long wingspan. He's strong. He'll play with his chest. He even does it on this possession, and it's the thing that I think he needs to stop doing a little bit. He will try to gamble and reach and try to poke the ball away a little too often, but it doesn't hurt him here, and he just stifles the ball handler.
Corey, it's funny you bring that up, because for me, I also wrote that he gambles a little bit, but in a different way. I thought positionally, sometimes he was like a little bit too excited, a little too frenetic, like as a defender, where he would almost play himself out of position just because he was trying to do so much, which is like not the worst thing, right? At least that means he's locked in and he's like trying to make a play on the defensive side of the ball. So I didn't hate that. But there were times that I thought like, where I thought like, hey, let's pump the brakes a little bit, let's get a little bit more disciplined. But the on-ball stuff I really enjoyed, man. Like he's got really good length to him. I thought laterally he moved really well. I thought he really used his length as a weapon in the passing lanes as well. I don't know, a lot to like. Just I think some maturation will come and will be necessary for him. Is all I thought. Yeah,
that's a great word, maturation, right? Because you could tell he competes. I mean, look at him; he's in his stance, right? Yeah. He's low, like he's locked in, he's focused. But you got to know, like you don't need that little reach there at the end. Like he gets blown by. It doesn't ultimately hurt them on this possession, but it's just that little thing. If he's just staying solid, I think that's really what he has to do as a defender to make an impact, is just stay solid. And I think that's something that a lot of young players that are athletic, kind of struggle to understand. It's more important that way to just force a bad shot and get a rebound than it is to try to gamble for every steal. If you're going to steal, just playing solid and trying to force off-ball steals, like because you're making them make decisions with the pressure that you put on. But I think that he's a real like two-way prospect, because he does have the tools, he does have the length, and he really does put in the effort on that end. So, ultimately, I think, the kid is a really, really fun high-level prospect, and I'm super excited to see how he plays in that system that I think is going to be really friendly towards, his draft stock this year.
One final thing for me, Corey. Another thing that wins points with us always is a kid that gets into a stance consistently. If you're getting into a stance, we're going to automatically bump you 5 points as a defender, and he's one of those guys. So I'm with you, man. There's a competitive aspect to him that I think is great, and also the tools are great too. So it's hard not to project him as a good defensive wing.